The most awaited marathon court hearings start in October 1995. Tension grips the court on the day Alfaro comes face to face with the accused Hubert Webb and the rest of the gang. Prosecution eyewitness Jessica Alfaro sticks to her story and pins Hubert Webb to the scene of the crime as the mastermind of the murders. Two former household helpers of the Webbs, Nerissa Rosales and Mila Gaviola, also confirmed that Hubert, as well as his father Freddie, were in Manila at the time of the murders. Rosales remembers serving juice to Hubert and two other friends on the eve of the crime. Mila Gaviola, the laundry woman of the Webb family, says she washed Hubert's bloodied t-shirt on June 30, 1991. She claims also to have seen her master, Senator Freddie Webb, in the early morning of June 30, 1991, reading the newspaper.
Case number 95-404, the people of the Philippines, versus Hubert G.P. Webb et al.
Finally, it's the turn of the Webb's attorney to somehow repair the damage. He calls prime suspect Hubert Webb to the stand, who sticks to his alibi and submits documentary evidence that he left the Philippines for the United States on March 9, 1991, and came back almost 19 months later on October 26, 1992. His father, Freddie Webb, shows stamps in his passport proving he was also in the U.S. on the night of the crime. The defense then make their move to discredit the state witness Jessica Alfaro and start demolishing Alfaro's credibility by looking into her personal background.
It's not really a question of numbers. If you have a sole witness who is credible, he or she can really defeat the testimony of a dozen others. But in this particular case, I think the sole witness was lying through her teeth.
The defense says that Alfaro was being fed the information by the National Bureau of Investigation, or NBI, and that she hadn't witnessed the murders at all.
The NBI is the investigating agency, the functional equivalent of the FBI. They were the ones who really manufactured the case. I wish I could use a milder term for fabricating, but no matter how you cut it, comes down to that. It was a testimony of a drug addict who used and were trained to adopt the version of an earlier group of suspects. And they trained Jessica to mouth or repeat the same.
Sagisag's theory is supported by John Hera, the first security escort assigned to guard Jessica Alfaro during the trial.
Hindi ko alam kung sino nakaka-rehearse na eh. Mas nalalaman ko lang na nagre-rehearse lagi bago mag-hearing. So, kung nagre-rehearse, ibig sabihin, they're into something already.
Supporting their seemingly outrageous statement, the defense cites an earlier confession from Alfaro that differs from the sworn statement being used as evidence in court. In her first signed confession to the NBI in April 1995, Alfaro said that she only heard and did not actually witness the crime. She learned of what happened inside the house during a blaming session right after the group left the Vizconde residence. In open court, it is revealed that Alfaro is not just an ordinary witness. She is a longtime informer of the NBI who supplies information about drug pushers and other criminal elements. Hubert Webb's lawyers then focus on a key discrepancy in Alfaro's story, her claim to have witnessed the crimes by peeping from a bedroom door that was left ajar. the defense calls on the Vizconde's domestic helper, Belinda Mentita, who knows the bedroom's layout and tells the court that it was improbable that Alfaro could have seen what she claims. Lawyer Zenaida Acorda was with the prosecution and defense panels during a visual inspection of the Vizconde residence before the start of the trial.
When you open the door, you cannot see the bed. You cannot possibly see what Jessica said she saw in her affidavit.
Alfaro revises her story in court. She says she did actually step inside the bedroom when she could not see anything from peeping through the slightly open door.
We demonstrated that when you open the door, you could not have seen what she said she saw. That is why during the court testimony, she changed her version.
But Judge Amelita Tolentino accepts Alfaro's explanation of the discrepancies in her two sworn statements.
The trial judge prevented the defense from cross-examining Jessica on the first affidavit.
With Jessica Alfaro's testimonies upheld by the court, the defense turns to the accusation that Webb was in Manila at the time of the killings. The FBI turns over to the court a number of documents upon the request of the Philippine government. It verifies Webb's alibi through the accused's travel records with the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service, or INS. Manila journalist Ramon Tulfo confirmed that Hubert was, according to the evidence, in the U.S.
I interviewed the family that Hubert stayed in, his uncle and his aunt, and the neighbors. But the big one was the owner of the bicycle shop where Hubert Webb bought his bicycle on June 30, 1991.
Despite the documentary evidence, the NBI and the prosecution panel continue to insist that Webb was in Manila at the time of the murders. They say that although he is confirmed as having left Manila for the U.S. in March 1991, he could have returned to the Philippines, committed the murder, and sneaked back to the United States without being detected any time after that. But Webb is able to present certifications from U.S. and Philippine government officials that after arriving in America on March 9, 1991, he never left the United States until after October 1992.
There was this computer printout which printed the dates of entry and dates of departure. And it was clearly stated there, date of entry, March 9, 1991, date of departure, October 26, 1992. No other record of any entry or departure in between. And these are certifications issued by no less than Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State Warren Christopher, U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno, and the Office of Commissioner Anthea Domingo of the Philippines.
Even the FBI's Robert Hefner says the scenario painted by the NBI and the prosecution is highly unlikely.
It would be very difficult to fake documents such as U.S. immigration records, U.S. custom records that we obtained. I would say it would really be impossible for someone who's in the U.S. to, who's there legally in the U.S. In other words, he arrived, his passport is stamped through immigration. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, for that person to leave and then come back in the U.S. without going through that same process.
The NBI's Masson vehemently disagrees.
Because he doesn't know what's happening in our immigration. They just go by the record. But it is, well, practically common knowledge. You want to leave the country, huwag mo istampan niya. Lalo yung mga nag-immigrant, palalabas siya na lumabas, na hindi naman.
To back up Hubert's alibi, the Webbs request the FBI attaché to testify in court about the FBI findings, but the U.S. government turns down the bid.
On many type of cases, different governments will not allow diplomats to testify. Not one, in other words, it's strictly a domestic matter. Being in the Philippines in a diplomatic position, the U.S. government would not let me testify at that time.
The other 5 imprisoned murder suspects had their own alibis, detailing where they were and what they were doing at the time the crime happened. But aside from Webb, only Lejano took the witness stand. Estrada did not even present any evidence to prove his innocence. Incredibly, all the accused adopted the evidence and relied on the alibi and denials of Hubert Webb.
It's a matter of legal strategy. Whatever evidence is presented in court, you can actually adopt as your own evidence.
Sinabi na all for one for all. Yan ang kanila.
As the spotlight is on the court battle between the prosecution and the Webbs, the manhunt for the 2 other accused who are at large, Joey Filard and Dong Ventura, quietly takes the back seat.
Nag-disappear nila sa record eh. Wala na eh. Because wala naman silang mabanggit na talagang specific act na ginawa eh. It was just mentioned in the course kasama ron somewhere in what occasion.
With the prosecution contesting Hubert's alibi every step of the way and clearly enjoying the upper hand, the defense comes up with another plan. Webb's lawyers petition the court to order a DNA test on the vaginal smear taken from the corpse of Carmela Vizconde during the autopsy. They argue that if the sperm specimen in the vaginal smear does not belong to Hubert, then it proves that he did not rape Carmela as claimed by Alfaro. But Lady Judge Tolentino junks Webb's petition. She says the technology for DNA testing is not available in the country, and more importantly, not yet accepted as evidence in Philippine courts. The judge also cites the possibility of the vaginal smear being contaminated because of the frequent and long brownouts that hit the country in the early 1990s. In the course of the trial, Judge Tolentino rejects 132 of the 142 pieces of evidence submitted by the Webbs. Despite the daily hearings, the trial lasts 2.5 years. Judge Tolentino hears the testimonies of 102 witnesses, 7 for the prosecution and 95 for the defense. 8 lawyers representing all the accused take turns in grilling prosecution witnesses, particularly Alfaro. The petitions and motions for reconsideration filed by the defense before the lower court, Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court adds to the delay. In November 1999, and with time running out, the Webbs ask for the testimonies of 5 more witnesses who are working in the U.S. to be taken into consideration as evidence that Hubert was not in Manila at the time of the murders. The Supreme Court denies, with finality, the motion of the Webbs.
We respectfully move that this...
After almost 5 years since the trial began, Judge Tolentino finally makes her decision.